Pokemon Scarlet and Violet have introduced convergent species. Hey everyone, it's Dusty Go-Go. Welcome back to my headcanon. You could compare this category to regional forms. Regional forms was a revolutionary idea because it allowed Game Freak to reinvent old Pokemon. And I love regional forms, but I think the concept of convergent Pokemon is so much more creative. In the real world, convergent evolution is when two species independently evolve similar traits due to the same environmental stresses. In the Pokemon universe, that means these two Pokemon will share a silhouette and a face. This is such a great way for Game Freak to recycle old faces, and the best thing is these Pokemon don't even need to share any biological similarities. What I want to do today is take a look at some brand new convergent species that were designed by amazing creators in our community. Let's get into it. Up first is a convergent species for Staryu and Starmie. This is based on the Starfruit, which is typically this yellow or green color. The first form Staryu really does just resemble a Starfruit. Of course, this Pokemon is going to be grass type, and then when it evolves, it becomes grass and psychic. At least that's what the artist has given this Pokemon. I think personally, Starfree, when it evolves, it should not have the psychic type. I think I just like when a convergent species has a completely different typing than the original Pokemon. If I had to give this a different typing, I think I'd give it grass and fairy type. The fairy type has been pretty closely tied to a lot of food-based Pokemon, so considering that Starfruit and Starfree are based on food, I think fairy type is very fitting. When you cut into a Starfruit, there's going to be little seeds, and those seeds show up to match the golden crest of Staryu and Starmie, where those gold bands would be. Instead, you have seeds, which is so creative. Even where the gemstones should be, instead of just another gemstone, it's basically what looks like the moist center of the fruit, right? Like where all the seeds in the membrane would be. Top tier Pokemon, 100% would train. Up next, we've got a new convergent species of Psyduck and Golduck. I'm kind of split when it comes to Psyduck and Golduck. I think Psyduck is kind of iconic, but Golduck has always seemed to me kind of plain. I do like the concept of it being more than just a duck and it being based on a kappa, but I think it's a little bit too boring to me. But what I love about this convergent species is that they lean into the hints of Psyduck and Golduck being based on Platypus and actually just make them a platypus. These new Pokemon, Poiduck and Volduck, are based on Platypus and heavily inspired by the Kappa side of their inspiration. They're base poison type, and as it evolves, the poison in its body fuels something that then is able to generate electricity. That's how this artist has described the Pokemon. Psyduck is pretty much exactly the same. Its hairs just kind of fall down, and its demeanor changes a little bit. It no longer has that headache. And where Golduck would have its webbed fingers, Volduck now has these like yellow markings on its body. I think even just having markings on its body to begin with and keeping the platypus tail does a lot for this Pokemon and its overall silhouette. And I also really appreciate the art style that these Pokemon were created in. All right, now we have three convergent species that are based on Gastly, Haunter, and Gengar. I'm very excited about these. I think it's a pretty difficult thing to take Ghost and Gastly Pokemon and make their silhouette look like a biological creature. So these Pokemon are based on the Nightjars, and Gengar is also based on an owl bear. So the Nightjar is a type of to me it looks like an owl. It looks like a type of owl. It's got this plumage on its head that resembles Gengar's pointy ears. I think we've always just assumed those are ears. And then the feather patterns, that's something that's also so great about this design. Gengar and a lot of Generation 1 Pokemon like Golduck, they don't really have patterns all over their body, so they look very one-dimensional. And I think what's great is that taking the plumage of this Pokemon and applying it to Gengar gives it a lot of life, rather than just its devious smile. It still has a devious smile, but it's within the context of a beak. The cutest thing is that Gastly is normally a floating face, but now it's kind of more like a hoot hoot where its legs are underneath its body. Love this so much. And even Haunter with its floating ghostly arms are just simple bird talons, right? Oh, and even the tongue that a Haunter would be able to stick out of its mouth is now it's just plumage. They're just pink feathers. I think this is a really clever design by Dark Sylvania. Next, we have three convergent species for each of the original Kanto legendary birds. We've got mosquitoes, Arthrokuno, and Mothtrace. These Pokemon are very cool. They actually look pretty robotic, for whatever reason. In this actual art that is created, they look kind of robotic, but they are based on bugs. And the story behind this is that in 2021 in Australia, there were 3 bugs that were discovered, and the scientists decided to name them after Articuno, Moltres, and Zapdos. This is real science, and the reasoning for this was that these Pokemon are so rare that they wanted to name them after something that was equally as rare. So that's a real life story, but now Mr. DJ Walnut has taken this concept and has imagined if these insects actually looked like the legendary bird Pokemon. Mosquitoes is Bug Electric, Articuno is Bug Ice, and Moltres is Bug Fire type. All of these Pokemon share the crest in the wing structure and the color palette of each of these legendary bird Pokemon. I think they're really smart designs. However, I think Pokemon like this, if these were real, I think the silhouettes would be a little bit closer to the actual bird Pokemon, but the sentiment and the inspiration behind these fake mon are really ingenious. I'm thrilled that this art exists because it really expands what we understand convergent species to be. And honestly, down the line, like, we could start to see more convergent species that look a little bit different than what we see in Scarlet and Violet. Moving on, we've got a normal type Tangela and Tangrowth. This is Mangela and Mangrowth. I think the inspiration here is that they're just like mammals, right? Like, maybe this should be called Mamgala and Mamgrowth, or maybe it's based on maybe it's supposed to be like a human under there. I don't know what the man is, right? Just like a hairy man. I think it makes sense, right? You've got Tangela, it's a bundle of vines. Just replace the vines with hair. Evolve it instead of like long tentacle like vine arms. Instead it has bear claws. It's such a simple swap, but it is effective. Obviously, this is just a normal type. Next, we've got a convergent species of Shuckle. This is a water and normal type turtle. It's just a turtle. It's called Tuckle. It's a turtle that can tuck itself into its body. Shuckle has always been seen as somewhere in between a worm or a turtle. I've seen it referenced as both. I think it's mostly just a worm. It's like if Ditto was inside of a shell. This convergent species is 100% something I could see in the game. All you have to do is recolor the shell and then kind of give each of Shuckle's legs just kind of like more of a paddle shape, something that could maybe push it along in the water. Water normal type. I mean, the normal type is cool. I'm happy to see normal tacked onto things. But I could also see this as a steel type. And there's also some cute art here of Tuckle next to a Wiglet. Both of them showcasing how goofy their long necks are. Okay, I just got more coffee. This next convergent Pokemon is based on Chinchou and Lantern. Super underrated Pokemon from the Johto era. I love these Pokemon so much. These are both bug and electric type. Both of these angler fish are turned into lantern, some sort of like lantern bug. Their fins turn into wings. Their antennae turn into, I guess they're just bug antennae. It's the same thing. The electricity within both of them is stored pretty much in the same place on both of these Pokemon. The only thing that I kind of disagree with in this design is that they both share an electric type. I really think convergent Pokemon really get the point across when they are completely different type combinations. However, I love this design and I love Lantern and Chinchou, so I don't really know if I would want to change the electric type necessarily. Maybe you could make these bug fire type and the electricity within them is actually fire. The antennae could create heat and it's that fire within their antennae that creates the light. So we just turned some fish into bugs. What if we take some bugs and put them back into the ocean? These next two convergent species are based on Paras and Parasect. We have Snaris and Parasuck. Both of these would be water and poison type. The concept of a parasitic life form is still similar, but instead of an insect and a mushroom, you have an octopus and sea anemone. The base form is honestly really cute. I think this design could be tweaked just a little bit to make the two silhouettes look a little bit more similar, but overall I'm happy with these designs. As Snaris evolves into Parasuck, the sea anemone now becomes some sort of giant shell on its body. Now we've got a convergent species for Shellder and Cloyster. These Pokemon are based on haunted books. Honestly, a concept that I'm surprised that we have not seen in the official Pokemon universe. Spellder is a pure ghost type. The ghost lives within the spine of a book, and just like a Shellder's shell opens and closes to protect the Pokemon inside. The book will open and close to expose the ghost Pokemon. And rather than a tongue, what you have instead is a bookmark. This is such a smart design. And when you give this Pokemon Duskstone, it will then evolve into Cloystome. The same concept applies here. Instead of Cloyster's horn at the top of its head, that's replaced with the bookmark. You can see some ink blots and even some torn papers on both of these Pokemon just kind of floating around the Pokemon ethereally. This is meant to match the horns and the spikes sticking off of Shellder and Cloyster. Cloystome is a ghost and fairy type. Perhaps fairy type is based on storybooks, right? That could definitely be what this is based on. These next 4 designs are out of this world. Make sure you're subscribed if you're not already. Trumantis and Sperantis is definitely something that I think could absolutely exist in the Pokemon universe. Maybe Game Freak is actually planning to release some Convergent Pokemon like this in the future. These are bug versions, true bug versions of Fomantis and Lurantis. Fomantis and Lurantis are grass type Pokemon. They're plants, right? But they resemble bugs. What if these Pokemon had convergent counterparts that are actually bug type Pokemon that look like grass type Pokemon? A little bit confusing, but we have Trumantis here. It's this little tiny, we have Trumantis, the mantis bug Pokemon. It's got a flower on its head. It's got antennae. I think what I like is the flower around its neck and its head, and the green color really does make it look like a grass type. And when this Pokemon evolves into Sperantis, it now kind of looks like Scyther. One of the most clever designs in this video is Geodude Grappler, and when you level it up holding a rocky helmet, we have Rolem. These are convergent Pokemon for Geodude, Graveler, and Golem that are based on frogs, or toads more accurately. These Pokemon would be ground and fighting type. Again, I think if you're going to make convergent species, the type should be completely different. I think you could easily make these Pokemon just fighting type, but we're really here for the designs. Geodude specifically, right? Geodude is a rock with a face and 2 arms. Instead, we've got Geodude, which is a toad that's a circle, right? It's got a face, and then it's got 2 giant legs, which is what frogs have. You can still see the little tiny arms right here, and when that evolves into Grappler, it's this big mighty toad. It's proud, it's mean looking, it's ugly, but they haven't really forgotten what it really is, which is a convergent species of Graveler. Graveler does have always that second pair of arms on its chest. You can see a pattern on Grappler where it has those 2 arms. Where those 2 arms would be, I think that's a great attention to detail. And all the rocks and the bumps all over Graveler and Geodude, rather than just being rock and pebbles and stones, it's the lumps and the bumps that you would find on a toad. So when you level this thing up holding a rocky helmet, it evolves into this mean looking Golem. It doesn't even look like a frog. It really looks kind of like its own thing, which is what a Pokemon should look like. It's still hunched over. It's got this shell. I guess it kind of evolves to look like it's like a turtle. That's kind of weird. A frog evolving into a turtle, but I guess we've seen weirder things. If Fungus and Amoongus had to live in the water, we would then have Zungus and Balloongus. This is an electric and water type. I interpret these convergent Pokemon as jellyfish. That's what they look like to me. The crown on their head just like pulsating in order to swim. The reason why I wanted to highlight this design was because the Pokeball design was turned into the Park Ball. This is the type of Pokeball that is used to capture Pokemon in the Pal Park. These convergent Pokemon have the same mouth, same shape, still have a Pokeball pattern on top of them. I think this is pretty great. I think if I had to change anything, it might be the tendrils or the antennae, whatever you want to call them, at the bottom of Balloongus's body. But I actually do like how its arms, like the main tentacles, actually extend out a little bit longer, just to give it a little bit of variance in its silhouette. I don't mind that too much. And as you can see, this Pokemon uses the electricity within its body to zap predators, or maybe just its trainers. Now we've got a Seahorse Pokemon that is a convergent Pokemon based on Flabebe, Floette, and Florges. These Pokemon dwell within the sea, attaching to sea anemone and other aquatic wildlife, finally evolving so much where the underwater, the aquatic fauna, is attached to its body. This Pokemon is said to be water type. The Flabebe line is traditionally just fairy type. It spends all this time around plants and fauna that you'd think it would also share a grass type typing, but it never quite develops that direct relationship, even though it can positively enhance grass type Pokemon. I imagine the Flabebe line is very similar, where they are water type, but they spend so much time around these aquatic plants. I also love that I'm pretty sure the Floette convergent species is pronounced wet. EAU is pronounced w, and ETTE is et. So that's wet. Flabebe, wet, and Shorgus. Let me know what you think about these convergent species. Subscribe if you want to see more Fakemon and Pokemon theories. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay warm and good luck hunting.